factors and multiples. And I would like everybody to take a look at my screen here. And we are going to go over what is a factor and what is a multiple. So let's take a look. I'm going to zoom in here for a second. And let's just read what is a factor. So a factor is a number that is multiplied together with another number to get a particular number. Now, what does that mean? Factors, we have two numbers that multiply together that are going to give you a particular number. So for example, if we're talking about the factors of 12, I'm going to highlight that, factors of 12. All right, well, let's think about the factors of 12. What do we multiply together to give us 12? Well, we always multiply our number by 1, right? Any number times 1 is itself. So if I'm listing the factors of 12, I'll put 12 over here. I could say 12 times 1, or I can reverse that and say 1 times 12, either way, right? What else do you multiply together to give you 12? Well, I know that 12 is an even number, which means I have to be able to multiply 2 by something to get 12. So let's think 2 times 6 gets me 12. All right, what's another set of numbers that you multiply together to give you 12? 4 times 3 or 3 times 4, right? Now, we're not going to list, like I wouldn't list 4 times 3 and then 3 times 4. That's the same set of factors, right? They're just in different orders. So let's take a look here. We have 12 times 1, 2 times 6, and 4 times 3. Is there anything else that you multiply together to give you 12? No, there's nothing else that you can multiply together to get the number 12, which means we're done. Now, when we list the factors of 12, okay, when we list the factors of 12, we always list them from smallest to largest. So you can see here how they listed the factors of 12. They started with 1, then they went to 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. Now I want to show you something cool. This is something that we practiced in class called the rainbow method, right? So when we list our factors, these over here, what I listed over here, these are what I would call factor pairs because they're a pair or a set of numbers. So if they asked for the factor pairs, then you could just write 12 times 1 or 1 times 12, 6 times 2, and 3 times 4, or vice versa. But if they want you to list them, you need to put them in order from smallest number to largest number. So here's how I double check to make sure that my numbers are correct. I use the rainbow method. So I'm going to start with my first number, and I'm going to draw a little rainbow line to my last number. 1 times 12 gives me 12. 2 times 6 gives me 12. 3 times 4 gives me 12. And it kind of looks like a rainbow. That's why we call it the rainbow method. So just double check that all of your numbers are there. Now, here's a tip to remember factors. There will always be fewer factors because there are a set number of ways to multiply to get a given number. So there's always going to be fewer factors because it is going to get complicated in making sure you understand the difference between factors and multiples. There will always be fewer factors than there are multiples, and I'm going to show you multiples here now. So let's take a look over here where it says multiples. Multiples are the numbers you say when you skip count by a given number. So for instance, our multiples of 12. When you think of multiples, I want you to think about skip counting, right? So I'm going to start with 12, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, and I could keep going, right? But there will always be more multiples because numbers go on forever and ever and ever, right? So when I'm thinking about multiples, I'm thinking about more multiples. There's going to be a ton of numbers. Now, I want to show you something. Let me just erase this real quick. So I want to show you whenever you are thinking about multiples, we can think of these two different ways. We can think about skip counting, right, like we just did, or I can think, okay, when I am trying to find multiples, that means I'm going to take my number, so my number here is 12, and I'm going to multiply 12 by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, by 6, and so on. Okay, so watch this. So 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. 12 times 4 is 48. 12 times 5 is 60. And I can keep going. 12 times 6, 12 times 7, 12 times 8, 12 times 9, 12 times 10, right? And I can continue my list of multiples. But I just want you to notice that all of my numbers that are listed here, when we skip counted, are the same numbers over here when we multiplied 12 by each number, right? Because skip counting, when we're skip counting, really what we're doing is we're taking our number and we're multiplying it by 1, then we're multiplying it by 2, right? We're multiplying it by 3 mentally, okay? So that is how we find our multiples. That's how we find multiples. So we have factors, two numbers that we multiply together to give us a particular number. We have multiples where you take your one number. So if your number is 12, you take it and you multiply it by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, by 6, and so on, or you can just skip count. Now, I want to go over here for a second just to show you some more examples, and I'll try and zoom in as much as I can. So remember, factors and multiples are a little bit different, right? Factors are when we have two numbers that multiply together to find a particular number. So for instance, let's take a look right here. It says, I'm going to highlight this. So factors are the numbers you multiply together to get another number. So 3 times 5 equals 15. 3 and 5 are factors of 15, right? Because when we multiply 3 times 5, we get 15, okay? Factor pairs are the numbers that you multiply together to get a given product. So let's say if we had the number 24, okay? Here's kind of like that rainbow method. We can do 1 times 20. Oh, let me go back here for a second and make this a little smaller. We can do 24 times 1, and you see that with the red rainbow. Then we have 2 times 12, and you can see that with the orange rainbow. Then we have 3 times 8. You can see that with the green rainbow. And then we have 4 times 6, and you can see that with the blue rainbow. So they listed the factors, but I just want you to see that the factor pairs are easier to find, and then just put them in order from least to greatest using your rainbow method, okay? So if we're talking about factors, we're talking about two numbers that multiply together to give us a number. Now a multiple, so let's take a look over here. A multiple is a product of a number and another number. So when we're multiplying, maybe if we're finding the multiples of 4, we're going to multiply 4 times 1 by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, and so on. Or you can also find multiples by skip counting. So let's take a look. They found the multiples of 4. So they started 4. Then 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 is 20. And I can keep going, right? So multiples, I'm multiplying one number by 1, by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, and so on. And then I could also skip count. Either way helps me find my multiples, okay? I am going to skip over prime and composite for right now. We will get back to that, but I just want to show you an example of our factors and multiples again. So for the first one, it says list all of the factor pairs for 36, right? So what they did, now I can do this on my own, so I know that I'm always going to have 36 times 1 because any number times 1 gives me that number. All right, then I'm going to say, okay, well, I know that 2 times 18 is a factor pair. You can see that inside the rainbow. 3 times 12 is a factor pair because when I multiply 3 times 12, I get 36. 4 times 9 is 36, and 6 times 6 is 36. Then all they did was put them in order from least to greatest and showed the rainbow method and connected each pair of factors. Listing the factor pairs for 48, they did the same thing. They started with 1 times 48 because we always start with the number times 1. Then they went through and thought, okay, well, what else can I multiply to give myself 48? I have 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, and 6 times 8. So those are all the factor pairs for 48. Now, if you take a look at the second box, or the second set of boxes down here, it's having you list the multiples of 5 through 100. So remember, multiples we skip count, or we multiply 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 3, and so on. So skip counting by 5s is really easy. We can do that all together, right? So if I'm listing the multiples of 5, I would go through 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and so on. And you can see they go all the way up to 100. Same with the multiples of 8. Go ahead and multiply 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 5 is 40, and so on, right? So either way, sometimes it might be easier to skip count because you can skip count quickly. Other times you might have to think in your head, okay, take my number, multiply it by 1, multiply it by 2, multiply it by 3, 4, 5, 6, as many as I can, or as many as I'm asked to do. Okay? This is just a recap on factors and multiples. Make sure that you are just trying to remember the difference. You'll always have fewer factors and you'll always have more multiples for a number.